and she's here tonight to share a little bit about, just from one of our recent graduates of our relational leadership training program in Kansas City. Welcome to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. I was telling Lieutenant Boyd earlier tonight, nobody could get me up talking about prisons and solitary confinement while wearing a boa and a feather. That's a first. I've been doing this work for a long time, but that's Lori Lazar. Lori mentioned, I'm going to spend most of my time up here tonight sharing kind of a testimonial from my client, Robert Ray, who's at Colorado State Penitentiary. A lot of stories in prisons are individual, everyone's story is different, but his is one of the very few people who was on Colorado's death row for many years. So he had it particularly hard. And I want to give a little context before I read his comments. And I want to also emphasize, this predated the era of Dean Williams and the reform era that we're in now. But Colorado used to have a system where if you were on death row, you were in solitary confinement, period, regardless of how good your behavior was on the inside. Simply by dint of that sentence, you couldn't get out, no matter how good your behavior was. You couldn't earn your way out, as long as you had that sentence.
Hey Gail, can you just hold your mic?
Yep, sorry. And so Robert Ray was in solitary for a long time, pure solitary, and I mean not getting out of the cell for 23 hours a day, locked down in the cell 23 hours a day for 9 years. And just to get a little legal context, not to get all legalistic here, but I am a lawyer. The United Nations has some, their rules, they're called the Mandela rules. They're the United Nations rules for the minimum humane treatment of prisoners. They apply internationally, and they're sort of human rights standards, right? And just for context, what they say is you shouldn't be in prolonged solitary confinement. That is prohibited. And they define prolonged solitary confinement as 15 days, more than 15 days. Okay, so he had 9 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and that's the context for what I'm about to read. So he is with us. He is with us in spirit, and I'm going to try and do justice to his words in the dim light. Is there any way to get a little more light?
No, I was trying to pull that light.
Okay, come here.
Oh yeah, just walk down to that light right there.
This is good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Electricity in the 20s was rough.
My name is Robert Ray. I've spent over half my life incarcerated behind bars, almost 18 years. Of those 18 years, I spent 9 years in 23-hour lockdown, which is known as administrative segregation, and I spent an additional 6 years in the management control unit, which basically turned out to be another form of administrative segregation. While living in segregation, I was deprived of any meaningful interactions or human contact. Being in isolation for so many years, I became comfortable in my isolation. I felt safe in my isolation. Just the thought of being around other people made my heart race and my palms sweat. In April 2020, soon after Governor Polis abolished the death penalty, I was finally set free from my isolation. Suddenly, I found myself in general population environment with over 120 residents. I was so overwhelmed. I was forced from one extreme to another. Over the years, I'd become accustomed to having conversations through a cell door or an air vent in my cell. Now I was being forced to communicate face to face. But I no longer knew how to communicate face to face. When attempting to talk to staff, I found myself worrying about where my hands were and what my hands were doing during the entire interaction. It was exhausting. So much so that I was never fully present during my interactions. Tragically, I felt more comfortable at that point being cuffed up and restrained. Chains, shackles, and a closed cell door were my security blanket. When attempting to interact with other residents, I would be filled with such anxiety that I would limit my interactions as much as I could. I 100% did not feel comfortable outside my isolation. Since April 2020, I gradually became acclimated to this foreign environment, but I recognized that I still had a long way to recovery. About 6 months ago, the Colorado State Penitentiary posted a flyer from the Realness Project that said they would be offering a course on ways to empower human connection, skills on how to become a better active listener, ways to de-escalate anger, and other useful strategies and aspects of effective communication. When I was in the mind state of being comfortable in my isolation, I knew it was detrimental to my growth and development. During all the years I spent in isolation, I used to fantasize about what it would be like to have authentic conversations of substance. So I decided to participate in the Realness Project. I got so much out of the Authentic Relating course. I can truly say I've gotten more out of the Realness Project program than I've gotten with any other program. My anxiety is easier to manage thanks to the skills and techniques I learned from the exercises Lori and the Realness Project provided. I'm no longer afraid to be vulnerable. Before the Realness Project, if I was overcome with emotion, I would do my best, my very best, to fight it and to keep my tears from exposing myself. If my tears did manage to squeeze past my eyes out onto my face, I would puff my chest out in the most manliest fashion, anticipating that someone would think I was weak because I was crying. But now, after my experience with the Realness Project, I welcome my vulnerability. I am confident in my vulnerability. I cry proudly, with no resistance, and it feels good. A side effect I've noticed from my openness to being vulnerable is it's contagious. When one of us do it, we all do it. And I tell you this, there is no better sight to see than a group of men crying with confidence. I did not think I needed help with active listening, but it's clear I did. After following and applying the things the Realness Project taught me on how to become a better active listener, my wife and I resolve conflict much easier and quicker. But overall, we hardly have conflict now, and I owe it to me becoming a better listener and not trying to fix everything she speaks to me about. I've also acquired more tools to de-escalate myself in conflict with others in a way that builds relationships instead of tearing them down. It is not only me who I notice or see positive changes in. The other guys who have participated in the program have become better at communicating too. That has created a more harmonious community between us, and it seems like it's spreading to others who didn't take the course yet. I know that this journey is a lifelong journey, continuing to increase and sharpen the skills I learned in the Realness Project. It's a journey I embrace and look forward to, because I know that only deeper, meaningful relationships will result from that. So with all that being said, thank you, Lori and the Realness Project, for everything you have done, for not just me, but for everybody.
Woo!
The temperature and environment in this incentive unit I'm in is changing because of the skills you taught us. It's contagious. People are learning to communicate better, and that makes a safer environment. It makes our world bigger. Thank you.